The cops crashed Jenna's birthday before the first toast. Her mother handed them the deed. Sole owner, Lorraine M. Carter. "She can't do this," Jenna gasped. "She's my mother." "She's also the legal owner," the officer replied. Guests went silent as Jenna's eviction began in real time. Lorraine just smiled. "Being your mother didn't mean surrendering my house." All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The clink of wine glasses and candlelight chatter filled the dining room, the sound as curated as the place settings. Lorraine Carter sat at the end of the table, a warm smile pasted on, as Jenna held court with the confidence of a woman who believed her crown would soon pass down by default. "Once the house is finally ours," Jenna said, swirling her Pinot as though it were prophecy. "I'm redoing the kitchen. Mom's taste is aged." A ripple of laughter passed around the table like a dish being served. Jenna leaned into her husband, whispering something loud enough to be overheard. "You've seen the brass fixtures. So vintage it's practically prehistoric." Lorraine didn't flinch. She reached for her water, steady hand, neutral face. She didn't look at anyone. Didn't need to. She'd been in this room longer than any of them. Every molding, every chandelier, every faded floral in the wallpaper bore her fingerprints, but no one noticed wallpaper unless it was peeling. She took a sip and smiled. "You'll have to show me the plans sometime." More laughter, polite, glancing. No one caught the weight behind her words. Lorraine stood soon after, claiming a headache and slipping away to the guest suite. Her guest suite, that was the term Jenna used now, as if Lorraine were a visiting relative and not the architect of everything around them. As she walked down the back corridor, her cane tapped gently against the oak floors she had chosen herself. There was a time this house echoed with her decisions. Now it muffled them. The walls weren't thin, but the disrespect had learned how to travel through brick. Inside her suite, she removed her heels and unpinned her silver hair, her movements slow but deliberate. She crossed to the armoire, an heirloom from her grandmother, and pulled open the bottom drawer. Beneath layers of lace linens and forgotten silk scarves, her fingers found it, the green binder. Unmarked, inconspicuous, but thick with power. The family trust. She placed it on her desk, its spine creaking open like something awakening from sleep. Her late husband, Charles, had insisted they draft it together after her first stroke, back when fear made them practical. Jenna had played the dutiful daughter then, tea-fetching, soft-speaking, nodding through estate lawyer meetings like she hadn't already Googled how to retile a guest bathroom. Lorraine flipped to the first flagged page, her fingers steady despite the old ache in her joints. Joint title transfer, conditional upon medical need, power of occupancy, lifetime. Override authority, retained by grantor. She traced the clause with the edge of her nail, eyes narrowing slightly. They hadn't removed this. They had forgotten what she remembered. A faint knock sounded on the suite door, then a quick open. Jenna's voice floated in. "Everything okay, Mom? You missed dessert. We saved you a slice." Lorraine closed the binder and turned, smiling. "That's sweet of you, honey. I'll have it in the morning." "You sure? It's from that place you like. The one downtown." Lorraine nodded. "I'm sure." Jenna hovered another second, then left. The door clicked closed. Lorraine waited until the hallway was silent again. Then she turned back to the desk and reopened the binder. She slipped in a fresh, sticky note, this one labeled in her looping script, "Next steps, title review, refile clauses." The silence of the suite felt different now. Not like exile, but incubation. Outside, the house carried on. Music, footsteps, the faint clatter of forks being rinsed. Lorraine sat quietly with her binder, her hands folded over it like a chess master resting before the endgame. She looked toward the window. The garden lights flicked on automatically, casting pale gold over the roses she once pruned herself. Jenna had planted succulents in their place last year. "Less maintenance," she'd said. Lorraine smiled. She wasn't pruning anymore. She was planting something else entirely. She whispered into the quiet, "They think I'm wrapping up. I'm about to begin again." The next morning, Lorraine sat by the bay window of her guest suite, a soft gray throw draped across her lap, the green binder open beside her like a co-conspirator. Outside, birds pecked at the dew-glossed grass, oblivious to the house's shifting energy. Her tea had gone cold, but she hadn't moved in 20 minutes. The clause was still there. Grantor retains lifetime right of occupancy and revocation authority unless declared legally incapacitated. Signed. Witnessed. Never removed. She traced the line with her finger again, like it was scripture. They hadn't erased her, just boxed her in. 2 years earlier, after her stroke, Lorraine remembered Jenna sitting by her hospital bed, eyes wet, voice soft. "Mom, you need rest. You shouldn't worry about paperwork right now. Let me and Dan handle the logistics. For tax reasons, it's cleaner if we move the house into joint title. You'll still live there, obviously." Obviously. At the time, Lorraine couldn't lift a spoon. Her left hand had trembled so violently they'd wrapped it in a heated mitt to stop the spasms. Signing something, anything, felt like surrendering to survival. Not compromise, just compliance. They'd brought in a notary and a lawyer who spoke in words Lorraine could barely parse through the fog of medication. Jenna stood close, her hand lightly on Lorraine's shoulder. "It's just a formality," she'd whispered. "You'll always be in charge." Now Lorraine stared at that lie, written in cursive and notarized into silence. These days she rarely left her suite, not because she couldn't, but because she wasn't included. Jenna's tone was always soft, always smiling, like a hostess with a high-maintenance guest. "Mom, we're going to dinner with friends tonight. You probably wouldn't enjoy it. Too loud. Dan and I are thinking of knocking out the back wall, maybe put in a sliding glass door. You don't need to worry about it, you've got your space. Hey, we moved your framed pictures into storage. Thought you'd like more breathing room in here." The suite was 900 square feet, tastefully decorated with bland neutrals Jenna swore were soothing. Lorraine's floral drapes had been swapped out for muted gray blackout curtains. The armchair she'd chosen 20 years ago was replaced with something from an influencer's blog. Harder, colder, sleeker. And her meals? Left outside the door most nights on a tray, like room service in a very polite prison. She'd once hosted 30 guests in this home for Thanksgiving. Now she hadn't been invited to Jenna's last 3 dinner parties. One of them, she'd only learned about from a leftover bottle of Prosecco she'd found on the porch. That afternoon, she pulled open the drawer of her writing desk, retrieving the manila folder where she kept archived documents, just in case. Among them, the original grant deed from when she and Charles first bought the home, then the amended joint title paperwork from 2 years ago. But nestled between those was a document Jenna had clearly overlooked, a trust amendment Charles had insisted on adding in 2015 when his own health had started to decline. Lorraine scanned the language again, heartbeat picking up. The grantor may revoke or reverse any estate disposition made under duress or temporary incapacity. This authority is not subject to time limitations or co-beneficiary approval. She stared at it. It was ironclad. She didn't need permission. She didn't need to ask. She simply needed to act. Her suite suddenly felt colder, not from doubt, but from awakening. She rose, moved to her armoire, and pulled out the small safe where she'd kept her valuables and memory drives. With a click, it opened. Inside was the original estate planning binder, the one the lawyer had updated but never discarded. She opened it, pages fluttering like wings, finally remembering how to fly. As she read, her eyes settled on a tabbed divider marked Property Oversight Clauses. She smiled, and then she underlined a sentence with the edge of her thumbnail. Override authority remains in full effect unless formally revoked by grantor. Lorraine whispered into the silence, "You gave me a room, Jenna. But I never gave up the role." The ink had barely dried on the underlined clause when Lorraine picked up the phone. She didn't rush. She didn't fumble. She simply dialed from memory. "Tony," she said, her voice smooth, calm. "It's Lorraine Carter." A beat. "Well, look who's back," came his low chuckle. "Tell me it's not another emergency patch job on someone else's bad taste." "Not this time," she said. "I'm redesigning. My space. I want it done quietly and quickly. High-end materials. No cut corners." She paused, glancing toward the kitchenette Jenna once dismissed as all you need now. I want something Jenna would hate. Something that says, still standing. Work began within 48 hours. Tony's van arrived before sunrise, and by 7:30, Lorraine's suite buzzed with the subtle rhythm of reclamation, the hum of drills, the muted thuds of cabinets being dismantled, the comforting scrape of worn tile coming up like dead skin. Lorraine stayed nearby with her planner and pencil. She hadn't sketched like this in years, not since Charles passed, but her hands remembered the flow of form and function. The new cabinet layout followed a rhythm. Espresso machine on the left, glass front cabinetry above. The brushed brass sconces she'd once sourced for a boutique hotel now hung over her future cooktop. When one of the younger crew members asked about the backsplash pattern, she smiled and pulled out an envelope. Inside, a design she'd drawn in 1986 for a client who never had the nerve to approve it. Swirling vines, soft navy contrast, timeless but unapologetic. Tony nodded. Bold move. I'm done living in neutral, she replied. The noise didn't go unnoticed forever. Jenna returned from her morning errands with a smoothie in hand and an eye already twitching. As soon as she opened the front door, the faint scent of plaster and primer hit her like a threat. She marched down the side hallway, heels clicking like accusations, and burst into the guest suite. What the hell is this? Two workers froze mid-measurement. Lorraine, seated at the corner table reviewing faucet specs, didn't even look up. It's called a remodel, she said evenly. You didn't tell me. You didn't ask me when you tore up my herb garden. That was landscaping. This is structural. Lorraine looked at her, really looked at her. Jenna in her athletic wear, cheeks flushed, smoothie now abandoned on the nearest console like an afterthought. She looked like someone used to control, not power, just control. Funny how the house only matters when it's inconvenient for you, Lorraine said, her voice as soft as a whisper through lace. I thought you didn't even use the kitchen anymore. I didn't, because I wasn't allowed to. Jenna crossed her arms. This isn't how joint ownership works. Lorraine stood, her movements graceful and unhurried. Joint doesn't mean you get the microphone every time. It just means I finally decided to take mine back. Jenna blinked. So what? You're upgrading your kitchenette to prove a point? No, Lorraine said, walking past her daughter toward the armoire where she kept her keys. I'm upgrading my life, and this, she held up a gleaming brass key ring. This is how I open doors now. Jenna's voice cracked with disbelief. You're not seriously coming upstairs. I am, she said. The suite's under construction and the house is still legally mine, at least enough of it to take up some proper space. She paused at the threshold, turned slightly. Besides, she added, her tone like velvet over steel, you said I wouldn't be around forever. I figured I'd enjoy the place while I still am. Jenna stared, stunned, as Lorraine walked through the hallway with the calm swagger of a queen re-entering her throne room. Every step echoed with intention, each chime of the keys a reminder. This wasn't rebellion, this was return. Lorraine's heels echoed softly on the marble stairs as she ascended with a steadiness that turned Jenna's worst assumptions into ash. She didn't need help, not today, not anymore. The last time she had stood in the formal living room, she was clutching a railing and an apology, her cane tapping beside her like a shameful metronome. Now she carried nothing but a stack of linen napkins and a bottle of Veuve Clicquot chilled to perfection. The chandelier above her, her original piece, not Jenna's modern fixture, was back in place. She'd had it reinstalled quietly the week before. Tony's crew didn't ask questions, only hung it with the respect it deserved. By 11:15 a.m., the living room smelled of fresh croissants, lavender hand soap, and chilled strawberries macerating in elderflower syrup. Sunlight poured through the wide windows she'd once insisted on keeping original, their antique glass casting soft halos across the polished floor. Lorraine wore a pale blue blouse and a string of pearls Charles had given her the year they bought the house. She looked nothing like a woman meant to disappear. One by one, her bridge group arrived. Evelyn brought a lemon tart. Ruth, still sharp in her 80s, arrived in navy slacks and a matching poker face. Joan, newly widowed but bright-eyed, squeezed Lorraine's hand and whispered, God, it's good to be back in this room. I thought I'd never see it again. They all noticed. The restored rug, the fresh hydrangeas in her favorite vase, the playlist of Ella Fitzgerald humming from the corner. So, Ruth asked, popping a grape into her mouth, are we officially in the rebellion phase of retirement? Lorraine smiled. We're in the return phase. I'm reclaiming square footage and dignity. Cards were dealt, champagne flowed, laughter returned to walls that had spent too long coated in Instagram silence. Then the door slammed. Jenna's voice pierced the air. Are you serious right now? The women paused, glasses half raised. Lorraine stood, composed, and turned slowly as her daughter stormed in, wearing oversized sunglasses and fury. We said no guests this weekend, Jenna barked. Lorraine took a sip from her glass before replying. Then you shouldn't have advertised my home on Airbnb. Jenna blinked, startled. What are you talking about? Lorraine pulled her phone from her pocket and tapped 3 times. Up came the listing, Stylish Wine Country Estate. Weekend retreat. Photos of the living room they were now seated in, her rug, her chandelier, her art, labeled Elegant Lounge Area. The listing name? Hosted by Jenna and Dan. I had a friend check the short-term rental apps, Lorraine said, calm as ever. Guess whose face came up with 5-star host reviews? The bridge ladies shifted, eyes flickering with delight behind practiced expressions. Jenna's mouth opened, then closed. You're not even allowed to sublet without full ownership, Lorraine added, her voice a hair quieter but no less cutting. And lucky for both of us, I never signed it over completely. Jenna reached for the phone, but Lorraine pulled it back. You can keep your smoothie bar, she said, but if you're going to profit off my crown molding, you better start paying rent. Behind her, Jones stifled a laugh. Ruth raised an eyebrow over her cards. Gin rummy? She offered. Lorraine gave her a nod. Let's play. Jenna stood frozen for another second before turning and walking out, muttering under her breath. The room stayed warm. The laughter resumed. Lorraine sat back down, refreshed her champagne, and dealt a new hand. The next morning, Lorraine tucked a printed screenshot of the Airbnb listing into her leather tote, right beside her reading glasses and a legal pad lined with hand-drawn bullet points. The laughter from yesterday's brunch still echoed in her bones, but today wasn't about brunch. Today was business. The kind Jenna had counted on her forgetting. She stepped out into the crisp mid-morning air, the scent of dew and jasmine brushing past as she crossed the gravel toward her car. She hadn't driven in months, not since her last physical therapy milestone, but her grip was steady now, and her movements sure. The engine hummed to life beneath her fingers. At 10:03 a.m., she pulled into the office of Whitlow and Bird, attorneys at law, a small stone-front building nestled between a cafe and an antique bookstore downtown. A sign by the door still bore her late husband's handwriting on a brass plaque, etched years ago when Charles helped draft their original estate plan. Inside, the receptionist smiled warmly. He's ready for you, Mrs. Carter. In the corner office, her original estate planner, Gregory Whitlow, now grayer, rounder but still sharp-eyed, stood to greet her. Lorraine, he said, shaking her hand with gentle respect, I had a feeling I'd be seeing you again. She gave a half-smile. Turns out, stroke recovery isn't the only thing I'm good at. He gestured for her to sit. Let me guess. Someone underestimated your capacity. She slid the Airbnb printout across his desk. That, and I want to confirm something about the override clause Charles and I included. Gregory leaned in, adjusting his glasses. She watched his eyes skim the document. Then he turned to the old trust binder she'd brought along and pulled up the digital copy on his screen. I see it right here, he said after a moment. Clause 17b. Revocation power remains with the grantor in perpetuity unless formally rescinded by court order or amendment, neither of which, by the way, ever occurred. Lorraine's shoulders didn't move, but the air around her seemed to shift. Meaning, he said, tapping the screen, you still hold absolute authority to revoke, reassign, or freeze any transfer of ownership related to this property, including Jenna's partial title. She stared at the clause. It wasn't just a line of legal text. It was a key. Gregory leaned back. You want to refile? Not yet, Lorraine replied. First, I want to remind them whose name was on the blueprint before they were born. Gregory chuckled. You always were the architect and the general. Now I'm the inspector too. By the time she returned home, Jenna's SUV was gone. Dan's car remained, but Lorraine didn't stop to chat. Instead, she walked directly to the master bedroom, her bedroom, the one she hadn't stepped foot in since her stroke. She opened the door. The room was pristine, unnaturally so, minimalist bedding, a monochrome rug, and not a single trace of her. No family photos, no embroidered pillows, no scent of rosewood polish she'd always favored. She crossed to the walk-in closet, opened it, and looked at the full wall of shoes and seasonal coats Jenna had claimed. Then she turned, locked the door behind her, and removed the key. She'd already called the locksmith. A secondary lock would be installed that afternoon. Master closet secured, no further access without her say-so. In the front hall, she dropped a new envelope into the mailbox. Notice of deed record update, property control action pending. Inside, she had enclosed a brief note addressed to Jenna and Dan. This is your formal notice that title authority is under review. No alterations, remodeling, or third-party hosting may be initiated without written consent from the original grantor. See attached clause for reference. She signed it with a steady hand. Lorraine M. Carter. Original grantor, owner, occupant. At 5:47 p.m., Lorraine sipped chamomile on the front porch as the mail truck pulled away. Down the hall, she heard the front door creak open. Why is there a lock on the master closet? Jenna's voice rang out, sharp and confused. And what's this about a deed record update? You should check the mailbox before making assumptions, she called back, not rising from her seat. Inside, Jenna tore open the deed notice envelope with more force than finesse. Lorraine imagined the exact moment her daughter's eyes landed on the clause, the one Gregory had recertified just days ago. Revocation authority retained by grantor. The laughter, always Jenna's first weapon, didn't follow. And that's when Lorraine knew the laughing had finally stopped. Later that afternoon, Jenna reappeared in the kitchen with that old, practiced sweetness in her voice. Mom, I think we just need a real talk, she said, setting down a bottle of rosé like it was a peace offering. Things have gotten confusing. I never wanted you to feel boxed out. Lorraine, standing at the counter zesting a lemon, didn't flinch. You didn't want me to feel boxed out, but you listed the house online and locked my photo albums in storage. Jenna gave a sheepish smile. Okay, fair, that wasn't cool, but I didn't think you'd care about those old closets and guest linens. You mean my bedroom and my memories? Jenna winced. Look, let's just move forward, okay? Lorraine turned toward her, zest still clinging to her fingertips. Forward is where I've always been going. You're the one who got comfortable facing backward. There was silence. Then Jenna tried one more smile, the kind she wore like perfume, meant to mask, not mend. I'm glad you're better, she said softly. You seem sharper lately. Lorraine met her gaze. I've always been sharp. You just stopped looking. That night, the air inside the house turned still, thick with pretense. Lorraine moved through the upstairs hallway, barefoot, the soft pat of her steps careful and deliberate. She passed Jenna's office door and paused. Light glowed from the crack beneath it. Then came the voice. Jenna's. Not sweet, not diplomatic, just sharp enough to cut. She's unraveling, Jenna whispered into the phone. I swear, she's changing locks, printing legal notices, acting like she's still in charge. A pause. Then, louder, clearer. I'm talking to an attorney this week. Full conservatorship might be the only way to stop her from doing something drastic. If we file before anything else gets notarized, we can freeze the assets. It's just a matter of time. Lorraine's chest didn't tighten. Her hands didn't shake. She simply reached into the side pocket of her cardigan and pulled out the small black device Rachel had insisted she keep on hand. She flicked the switch. The red light blinked. Every word, every lie, every thread of strategy spilled through the crack in the door and straight into the recorder. She's acting like this house is still hers. It's not. She's not. Not really. Click. Lorraine turned and walked back to her suite, recorder in hand. No anger, no rush. just a different kind of silence, one she carried like armor. At dawn, she typed a short email to Gregory with the subject line, "Audio attached, urgent filing prep." She didn't need to say much. The audio said everything. She signed it with her usual care. Lorraine M. Carter. Original grantor still here. Still lucid. Still in charge. The next morning, Jenna entered the kitchen with 2 mugs of coffee and a tentative smile. "I thought I'd bring you one," she said, extending the cup. "Your favorite. Almond milk and honey." Lorraine accepted it without a word. Jenna leaned against the counter, casual. "Things feel better, don't they? Like we're aligned again." Lorraine sipped. "Alignment is only possible when both people are honest." A flicker crossed Jenna's face. "Of course." Lorraine smiled faintly. "Then we'll see how aligned we are when the attorney calls back." Jenna blinked. What attorney? But Lorraine was already moving toward the stairs. She didn't owe answers. She had proof. Jenna stood dumbfounded in the kitchen, her smile cracking like old porcelain as Lorraine turned and ascended the stairs without another word. For the first time, the silence wasn't passive. It was tactical. Jenna's hand tightened around the ceramic mug she had meant as a peace offering, but peace was no longer on the table. Behind her bedroom door, Lorraine didn't pace or second-guess. She opened her laptop with the confidence of a woman who'd once run million-dollar projects while raising a child who now thought she could outmaneuver her. She attached the audio recording. She filled out the form Gregory had sent 2 weeks ago, just in case. She clicked send. The email's subject line read, "Urgent, full POA reversal filing, audio enclosed." At precisely 10:34 a.m., Gregory Whitlow called back. "It's all right. In the system," he said. "We filed the revocation of power of attorney, citing full mental capacity and evidence of undue influence. Jenna will receive official notification within 48 hours, but practically speaking, the authority is yours again effective immediately." Lorraine nodded, though he couldn't see it. "I'm not done." "I didn't think so. I want her name removed from the co-signer profile on the estate account, all cards frozen, new ones issued to me only. Consider it handled. Also," she added, glancing at a printed spreadsheet labeled Household Expenses, "cancel the household expense card and initiate fraud review. The Airbnb rentals? That was income never reported to me." Gregory gave a low whistle. "You're gutting the structure." "No," Lorraine replied. "I'm rebuilding it. On bedrock this time." By early afternoon, she had a new card in her digital wallet and full reinstated control over the family trust. Jenna's permissions? Gone. The estate account's access logs would now ping directly to Lorraine's private number. Every dollar moving forward would be watched, tracked, recorded. She stood from her desk and walked to the mirror. There she didn't see a former anything. Not a former owner, not a former matriarch, not a former force. Just Lorraine M. Carter, corrected back into place. That evening, Jenna returned from yoga, flushed and glowing with effort and denial. "Dinner from Kibo?" she called out, letting the paper bag crinkle like a gesture of goodwill. "Thought it might be nice to hit reset." Lorraine emerged from the dining room, wiping her hands on a linen towel. "You'll need to use your personal card next time. The household account's been closed." Jenna blinked. "What?" "You'll also receive official notice by mail. I revoked your power of attorney this morning." "You can't just—" "I can." "I did." Jenna stared at her, face paling, then coloring in uneven patches. "You're seriously doing this? Over what? Some exaggerated misunderstanding?" Lorraine tilted her head slightly. "You called me a liability. You plotted conservatorship like a real estate deal. That's not a misunderstanding. It's a strategy, one I had to answer with my own." Jenna stepped back like she'd been slapped. "This is vindictive. It's clarifying." The next morning, Lorraine watered the hydrangeas in the front garden, the same ones Jenna once dismissed as too thirsty. Inside, Jenna was at Vivia Spa, indulging in her usual routine to clear her head. She ordered the full treatment: aromatherapy, facial, reflexology, the works. At checkout, she tapped the household card. Declined. She tried again. Declined. "Do you want to try another card?" the receptionist asked. Jenna forced a tight smile and pulled out her personal one. "Sorry, must be a glitch." Behind her, a woman whispered, "Isn't that the Carter daughter?" Jenna left without the collagen upgrade. Back at the house, Lorraine's phone buzzed. "Jenna, did something happen with the card?" Lorraine typed back, "Yes, it's no longer yours to use." Then she blocked the number. For the day, not forever. Not out of cruelty, out of boundaries. She had signatures. She had clauses. She had proof. And this time, she had control. The next day, Lorraine sat at the edge of the exam table, paper crinkling beneath her as sunlight filtered through the blinds in sterile stripes. Her pulse cuff deflated with a soft hiss. "You're looking sharp," Dr. Palmer said, flipping the chart with a quiet confidence. "And your labs back it up. Cholesterol, blood pressure, A1C, all normal. Memory and cognition?" He tapped his temple. "Cleaner than mine most days." Lorraine gave a small smile, adjusting the cuff of her cardigan. "That's good to hear. I need the kind of clean that holds up in court, not just polite conversation." Palmer looked at her more closely. "Are you sure everything's okay at home?" She met his eyes. "That's why I'm here." He nodded slowly, pulled out a form. "Would you like an official capacity letter?" "Comprehensive?" "Yes, with dates, signed and notarized. And include the date of my last MRI, too, just so there's no room for reinterpretation." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. He just started typing. 2 hours later, Lorraine sat in her car outside the estate attorney's office with the envelope in her lap, her name at the top, bold and unambiguous. Lorraine M. Carter, verified statement of cognitive fitness. Doctor signed, exam certified, time-stamped. She didn't open it. She didn't need to read it. She had lived it. She reached into her tote and pulled out a black thumb drive. Rachel had helped her label it with a gold-embossed sticker. Audio proof, unedited. The folder inside held 3 files: Jenna's conservatorship phone call, a screen recording of Jenna removing Lorraine's photo albums from shared cloud access, and a clip from the brunch where Jenna had laughed about finally getting to redo the kitchen once Mom's out of the way. None of it had seemed like much at the time. Now it was exhibit ready. The receptionist smiled as Lorraine entered the polished marble lobby. "Miss Carter, Mr. Finch is expecting you." Finch, the estate attorney, had the kind of desk Lorraine used to source for Napa tasting rooms. Expensive, wide, and made for posture. He rose when she entered. "Lorraine, I heard from Gregory. It sounds like you've been busy." She sat without being invited. "Let's call it productive." He gave her a respectful nod. "You said you wanted to make some updates?" She placed the envelope on his desk, then followed it with the thumb drive. "This is confirmation of my current health, mental and physical. Clean bill across the board, and this," she tapped the USB, "is for insurance. I need everything ready to file by next Friday." He raised an eyebrow. "You're moving fast." "She's the one who thought I wouldn't last long. I'm just making sure I outlive her timeline." He chuckled softly. "Anything in particular I should prioritize?" "Full restatement of the will, beneficiary clause amendments, digital asset protections, and a media-ready letter of mental capacity, should anyone come knocking with a challenge." "You expect they might?" "Oh, I know they will. Jenna's not used to losing, especially not gracefully." Finch leaned back in his chair. "I'll need about 3 days." "You've got 2. Outside, the late afternoon sun was beginning to soften, stretching long shadows across the hood of her car. Lorraine pulled out of the lot and drove home with both windows cracked, letting the wind rush over her cheeks like applause. At a stoplight, she glanced in the rearview mirror. Not to check her reflection, to remind herself who was behind her now. Jenna wasn't just miscalculating her strength, she was misreading the entire narrative. Back at the estate, Lorraine walked past Jenna in the hallway without a word, just the soft click of heels on tile and the scent of bergamot trailing behind her like punctuation. In her hand, the sealed envelope and the thumb drive in its case. She stepped into her room, opened her briefcase, and placed them inside side by side, like strategy and sentence. They sat there in her briefcase, quiet and final, the envelope and the thumb drive, evidence and execution. Lorraine opened it that morning with the same calm she used to open design blueprints. But instead of granite samples and textile swatches, this plan was made of signatures and strategy. Downstairs, she could hear Jenna humming tunelessly while emptying the dishwasher. Still pretending, still playing hostess in a house no longer hers. Lorraine dressed deliberately, charcoal wrap dress, vintage silver watch, no jewelry beyond her wedding band. She didn't need statement pieces. Her next statement would be on record. At Finch and Whitlow, Mr. Finch greeted her not as a client, but as the executor of her own legacy. "Let's walk through the final version," he said, laying out the new documents on the table between them like sacred scrolls. Lorraine adjusted her glasses and read silently, not because she didn't trust him, but because she trusted herself. "Jenna Carter," Finch said carefully, "has been fully removed as primary heir. The sole beneficiary is now the Stonemark Community Housing Trust, effective immediately upon your passing." "Does the clause remain?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, if she contests, formally or informally, she forfeits everything: property, possessions, financial accounts. The clause is anchored by the mental capacity letter and the audio proof." Ironclad Lorraine signed with clean strokes. "It's not vengeance," she said. "It's a correction." Later that day, back at the estate, Jenna was curled on the couch in a cashmere throw, laptop open, earbuds in. Lorraine passed by without breaking stride, holding a file folder that would outlive both of their moods. "You going out again?" Jenna asked, barely glancing up. "Just tying up loose ends." Jenna sipped her tea. "Don't overdo it, Mom. You've had a busy week." Lorraine gave a pleasant smile. "I'm only just getting started." That evening, Lorraine returned to her room and opened a private lockbox. Inside were old photographs, Charles's cufflinks, and now, her freshly notarized will. She placed it in the center and locked the box shut. Then she sent Rachel a message. "The trust is changed. You'll understand everything soon." Rachel responded a moment later. "You always did the hard things with grace. Proud doesn't begin to cover it." Lorraine exhaled, slow and steady. That word, proud, meant more than Jenna's 1,000 hollow gestures ever had. The next morning, Finch called. "Your will and trust are officially filed," he said. "Time-stamped, expedited, and backed by all supporting documents. Anyone looking to overturn it will hit a wall." "Not a wall," Lorraine corrected. "A mirror. They'll see themselves for what they are." Finch chuckled. "I'll courier you the certified copies today." "No rush," she replied, "but send them with tracking." Downstairs, Jenna was mid-conversation on her phone. "No, I'm telling you, I think she's bluffing. There's no way she actually removed me. I'm her daughter. It wouldn't hold up." Pause. "Even if she changed it, there'd be loopholes." Lorraine stepped into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of lemon water, slicing into a fresh Meyer lemon from the tree she planted with Charles. She said nothing. Jenna turned, startled. "You okay?" "Never better." That afternoon, the courier arrived. Lorraine signed for the package, brought it into her study, and unwrapped the envelope with careful fingers. Inside, one certified copy of her new will, one stamped trust amendment, one formal affidavit of mental capacity, and a printed postscript in Finch's handwriting. "It's never too late to take the pen back." Lorraine slid the papers into her fireproof cabinet and closed the drawer. Not to hide them, to protect them. Upstairs, Jenna opened her inbox and saw it. Subject, legal update, notification of beneficiary change. She clicked. Then she read. Then she reread. Then she stopped breathing for a moment. There was no threat, no explanation, just documentation. Stamped, final, executed. Lorraine M. Carter, sole authority. Jenna reread the email twice before closing the laptop, her fingers hovering above the keyboard as if still deciding how to type her way out of it. But there were no loopholes, no misunderstandings, just black and white proof, filed, time-stamped, and final. She wasn't the heir, she wasn't even a footnote. So she did what she always did, pivoted into performance. That night she arranged a family dinner as if nothing had happened. The table was set meticulously, white linen runner, tapered candles, and the good stemware Lorraine hadn't seen used since Charles's memorial. Roasted chicken, charred broccolini, wild rice pilaf. It looked like care. but Lorraine knew the scent of distraction when it came in the form of lemon thyme and curated playlists. "Thought we could use a little warmth," Jenna said, smoothing her linen napkin as Lorraine took her seat at the end of the table. "New season, new rhythms." Dan sat beside her, clearly instructed to smile and say little. Lorraine nodded and poured herself half a glass of Chardonnay. "Warmth is always welcome, especially after a week of ice." Jenna tilted her head but didn't take the bait. "Well," she said, raising her glass, "here's to new beginnings, fresh starts, clean pages." She looked pointedly at Lorraine, as if daring her to object. Lorraine clinked her glass gently, then raised it a second time. "And here's to old agreements, the kind written down, signed, witnessed, and honored." Dan shifted uncomfortably. Jenna blinked slowly. "You know," Jenna said lightly, "Dan and I were actually thinking about refinancing the estate, unlocking a little equity. With rates climbing, it just makes sense." Lorraine placed her glass down, slowly, deliberately. "And who exactly do you imagine signing off on that?" Jenna gave a soft laugh. "Mom, you don't need to be scared of paperwork. You can stay right here. We'd just be leveraging some assets for flexibility." Lorraine reached into the side pocket of her leather folder, an accessory Jenna had once mocked for being so dated, and pulled out a single sheet of heavyweight paper. "I'm not scared of paperwork," she said, unfolding it neatly. "In fact, I brought some." She slid the document across the table. The candlelight flickered over the gold county seal, the barcode at the top, and the title in bold, "Refiled deed, sole title. Holder, Lorraine M. Carter." Jenna's mouth opened, but no words came out. Dan leaned forward and squinted. "Wait, is this saying you—" "Yes," Lorraine said calmly. "It's saying what it says." Jenna finally spoke. You filed this without telling me?" "You've made many plans without telling me. I just decided to return the favor, with more legal clarity." Jenna laughed, brittle and breathless. "This is ridiculous. You're doing all this out of spite?" "No," Lorraine said, standing now, her voice even. "I'm doing this because you toasted to new beginnings and forgot who built the table you're sitting at." She reached for her glass and turned to leave. Behind her, Jenna's voice cracked. "You can't actually block the refinance." Lorraine didn't turn around. "I already did." Back upstairs, Lorraine tucked the original deed copy back into her fireproof cabinet, nestled between her will and Charles's old watch. She lit a candle, not out of mood but memory, and stood at the window, watching dusk roll in like velvet. Downstairs, she could hear muted arguing. Dan's voice was rising, Jenna's starting to fray. But Lorraine had stepped out of that script. She was no longer part of the scene. She was the writer now. And the story wasn't staying inside the house anymore. Lorraine sat by the bay window, laptop open, soft jazz playing low from the kitchen speaker. Outside, autumn painted the trees in rust and gold, but inside she was working in grayscale, memory, ink, and resolve. The email from Bonnie had arrived just before sunrise. Subject line, "Proofread this for me? Thought it might speak louder coming from someone like you." Lorraine clicked the link and read in silence, her morning tea cooling beside her. Op-ed submission. Local Times. "The Cost of Silence. What Happens When Matriarchs Are Marginalized." By Bonnie Griggs, community columnist. It opened with a familiar setting, Thanksgiving dinner, a smiling grandmother bringing out the last pie, then being asked to sit at the overflow table near the back. It morphed into something sharper, quiet disinheritance, subtle gaslighting, and the myth of aging out of your own home. The piece never named names, but Lorraine felt her pulse steady as the examples unfolded, almost word for word from conversations she and Bonnie had shared on long walks through the neighborhood trail. One line stood out. "There's a generation of women who built everything, and now find themselves living like tenants in the homes they designed." Lorraine didn't suggest a single edit. She replied with one line, "Send it in. I'll be ready when it hits." The op-ed went live on Sunday evening. By Monday morning, it was shared through 4 local Facebook groups, picked up by a regional women's network, and quoted, briefly but powerfully, on the local news morning segment. Lorraine didn't post about it. She didn't have to. Her inbox did the talking. Inbox 17 unread. Loved Bonnie's piece. Thought of you immediately. Sending love. My mom went through the same. Didn't know you were still living in the estate. Glad to know you're still running it. She even got a call from Helen at the Historical Society. Just read it, she whispered over the line. If I still had a voice like that, I'd be using it too. Lorraine smiled. You still do. They just stopped listening. Meanwhile, Jenna posted a photo of her holding a pumpkin latte captioned, "Fall is for family, warmth, and legacy." But the comments weren't what she expected. Interesting timing after that op-ed making the rounds. Legacy means more than pretty kitchens, Jenna. Didn't your mom design that house? Lorraine scrolled once, then twice, then closed the app. She didn't need to gloat. Visibility did the work for her. Dan returned home that evening holding a copy of the local Times in one hand and a frozen lasagna in the other. You see this? He asked Jenna, tapping the op-ed. Of course I saw it, she muttered, pacing the kitchen barefoot. She didn't even write it, Bonnie did. Still, he said, setting down the paper. It's got people talking. Jenna snatched the paper, scanned the article, and dropped it in the trash. People talk all the time. Yeah, Dan said slowly. But they don't always listen. This time, they are. Lorraine received one final message that evening. This time, from Rachel. Mom, just saw the op-ed. I didn't know half of it, but I do now. Let me know if you want help replying to anyone, or just want to talk. Lorraine typed, paused, and then sent, There's more to come. But yes, we'll talk soon. She set her phone down and turned toward the mirror in the hallway, the one Jenna had once taken down, saying it was too antique for the aesthetic. Now it hung front and center. It showed her exactly as she was. And for the first time in a long time, it reflected her back fully. Not as a shadow, not as a remnant, but as someone who had made the house and the headlines. Upstairs, Jenna sat with her phone in one hand and the discarded newspaper in the other. Her eyes landed on the final line of the op-ed. Erase a matriarch, and you may inherit a house, but never its meaning. She didn't speak, didn't scroll, just stared. Because for the first time, the story wasn't hers to tell. Jenna's image as local influencer starts to fray. Jenna kept staring at the op-ed's final line like it was a crack in the foundation beneath her feet. It wasn't just words. It was a mirror, one she hadn't meant to look into. And now, no matter how many curated captions or pumpkin-scented distractions she pushed online, the damage was done. Lorraine, meanwhile, stood at her desk upstairs with a printer humming softly behind her. The notice slid out clean, centered, and without flourish. Just facts and the force of law. Notice of termination, residency agreement, internal. Effective immediately, this document serves as formal notification that Jenna Carter's right to occupy the upper suite of the Oakview property will expire in 60 calendar days. This decision is non-contestable per updated trust control and sole ownership rights. Signature: Lorraine M. Carter, legal owner, grantor, and executor. She signed it with the same pen Jenna once mocked for, looking like it belonged in a museum. It still worked better than Jenna's signature had. Lorraine walked down the stairs slowly, not frail, but deliberate. With each step, she let the silence stretch between them like velvet pulled tight. Jenna was in the living room, phone in hand, scrolling furiously through comments on her latest post. The smile she'd worn when it first went live was gone, replaced by a tight line of tension across her jaw. Busy? Lorraine asked, setting the envelope on the edge of the coffee table. Jenna looked up, wary. What's that? Clarity, Lorraine replied. The kind you like printed. Jenna opened it slowly, her hands suddenly less sure. Her eyes moved quickly, then more slowly. Then they stopped moving at all. You're evicting me? I'm reclaiming my home, Lorraine said, voice level. You were never on a lease, just a courtesy. This is insane, Jenna snapped, slapping the paper down. You can't just throw me out. I didn't just, Lorraine said. This has been coming for a while. You're only surprised because you stopped listening. Dan came in halfway through the argument, grocery bag in one hand, car keys in the other. What's going on? She's kicking us out, Jenna snapped, waving the paper. She thinks she owns the place now. I don't think, Lorraine said evenly. I know, county records agree. Dan read the notice silently, then looked between them. We have 60 days? Correct, Lorraine said. Enough time to land, not enough to linger. Jenna's voice dropped to a hiss. You're punishing me. No, Lorraine said, turning toward the staircase. I'm correcting you. Later that night, Lorraine left a small envelope on Jenna's side of the hallway console. No legal header, no signature, just a note on simple ivory stationery. Handwritten in her slightly slanted cursive, the one Jenna once mocked in front of guests, laughing about how boomers still handwrite like it's a war letter. The note read, You laughed, I listened, now I live. She placed a single tulip next to it. Not a rose, not a lily, just a tulip, quiet, persistent, and impossible to ignore once it blooms. Upstairs in her room, Lorraine opened the windows and let the night air in. For the first time in 2 years, she slept without locking her bedroom door. Jenna would pack eventually, or scream, or negotiate. None of that mattered now. The paper had been signed. The timeline was hers. The next morning, Lorraine awoke to birdsong and the scent of eucalyptus drifting through the open window. For the first time in years, she hadn't locked her door, hadn't slept in half-alert vigil. Her breath came easy, her spine relaxed. There was no tension waiting behind her eyelids. Just morning, just quiet, just hers. She sat up, reached for her robe, and listened. No footsteps, no muffled arguments, just the low hum of the house like it was finally exhaling with her. Until her phone buzzed. The message came from Helen, neighbor, friend, and frequent supplier of unsolicited HOA updates. Is there a party happening at your house Saturday? Jenna posted something. Looked formal. Lorraine scrolled to the attached screenshot. There it was, on Jenna's social feed. Celebrating change, strength, and new chapters. Birthday soiree at the estate this Saturday. Wine, jazz, legacy. Lorraine stared at it for a long beat, the bitter amusement curling slow in her chest. Legacy. She folded the phone shut and walked downstairs, each step steady, deliberate. Jenna was in the kitchen, stirring her green smoothie with all the false cheer of a host preparing for applause. You're not planning an event this weekend, are you? Lorraine asked, voice cool. Jenna looked up, too fast. It's my birthday, Mom. Just a few close friends. It's tradition. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. Tradition doesn't override trespassing. You're on notice. Jenna scoffed. It's my home, too. No, Lorraine said, voice sharp but calm. It was my home you mistook for yours. That ends Friday. By Thursday afternoon, Lorraine had filed the necessary paperwork with the county. By Friday morning, she made one final call, this time to the local sheriff's office. I'd like to preemptively report unauthorized use of private property, party scheduled without owner's consent. The officer was brief but clear. If they proceed, we'll respond. You'll need visible signage in case it escalates. Lorraine nodded. Already printed. Saturday arrived dressed like spring. Champagne flutes lined the outdoor bar. Rental chairs gleamed white against trimmed hedges. String lights swayed above the patio. Her patio. Her lemon tree had been strung with lanterns. Someone had placed a Carter Soiree welcome board by the gate. She hadn't approved the guest list, or the signage, or the music now pulsing softly from rented speakers, but she'd approved the perimeter locks, and the gate switch. At 5:07 p.m., just as Jenna's first wave of friends arrived, heels tapping down the stone path, sunglasses perched like tiaras, 2 county deputies walked up behind them. Lorraine watched from the front porch, composed as ever, holding a printed deed in one hand and a copy of the code violation report in the other. The lead officer raised his hand. Evening, ma'am. Got a call about unpermitted hosting on private property? Lorraine handed him the papers without a word. Behind her, Jenna burst through the French doors in a gold wrap dress and trembling fury. "Are you serious?" she hissed. "I'm finished being quiet," Lorraine said. The officer turned to Jenna. "Ma'am, you're in violation of Municipal Code 38.7. No events may be held on property without the registered owner's written consent." "She is my mother," Jenna shouted. "She's doing this to humiliate me." "She's enforcing her rights," the officer replied. "This gathering is canceled. Now." By 6 o'clock, the guests were gone. The music silenced. The tables half cleared, uneaten appetizers still sweating on porcelain trays. Lorraine walked into the quiet, heels clicking against tile, and found Jenna slumped against the bottom of the stairwell. For the first time, she didn't look angry. She looked erased. Lorraine extended a manila envelope. "This contains your final notice," she said gently, but not kindly. "Your access ends Friday. Keys, codes, everything." Jenna stared at the envelope like it might catch fire. "You're actually doing this," she said. Lorraine's reply came like silk over steel. "You did it first. I'm just finishing it." She turned and walked away. Jenna didn't follow. The silence behind her was louder than any apology Jenna might have forced. With every step back toward the main staircase, she felt weight slide off her body like dust from old velvet. By the time she reached the second-floor landing, it was hers again, all of it. She paused in the hallway, once cluttered with Jenna's modern prints and impersonal touches, and looked around. Time to begin again. But this time, not for anyone else. For herself. The first thing she did was strip the walls down to the bone. The cool, neutral tones Jenna had insisted on were replaced with rich ivory, warm clay, and textures that echoed Lorraine's early design work. Crown molding, real wood, not that glued-on foam Jenna liked, was added back where it had once proudly lived. Lorraine had saved the original blueprints in a box marked "Do Not Toss" in the attic. She unrolled them like old gospel. The scent of fresh paint blended with the faint vanilla of lemon oil polish. Brass handles, vintage fixtures, and her old stained glass pendant lamp now hung above the hallway like a jeweled crown. She moved her things back into the master suite, not as a guest, not as a placeholder, but as the owner. Her rosewood vanity returned to its original corner. The cedar chest Charles had built slid back to the foot of the bed. Not one thing of Jenna's remained upstairs. Even the energy had changed. A week later, Lorraine sent out 6 handwritten invitations, each one addressed to a woman she knew had been sidelined, muted, or boxed out in their own lives. Margie, whose son had moved her to a safer unit near the airport. Claire, whose daughter-in-law had replaced her garden with turf. Bonnie, of course, the op-ed queen. Saturday afternoon, they came dressed in confidence and linen. Lorraine greeted them with sparkling rosé, jazz on vinyl, and a living room that no longer apologized for being older than Pinterest. They toasted with real glasses. They sat on chairs with character. And they laughed, not at anyone, but with memory and strength. "My daughter told me I was out of touch," Margie said, admiring the custom woodwork. "Now she's divorced and calling me for advice." Bonnie tapped her glass. "Well, cheers to being the damn blueprint." Lorraine didn't say much. She just leaned back into her newly upholstered armchair, one she'd recovered herself, and let the house feel full again, not with performance, with presence. Later, after everyone had gone, she walked barefoot down the hall and paused by her study. Her inbox pinged softly. Subject: Civic Award nomination. Confirm receipt body. Dear Ms. Carter, we're thrilled to inform you that your story, as featured in The Cost of Silence, has been nominated for this year's Civic Resilience Award. Please confirm availability for next month's community ceremony. Lorraine read it twice. Then she stood very still, fingers brushing the frame of her office door. She turned toward the mirror hanging in the foyer, the one Jenna had once called too sentimental. In the reflection, Lorraine saw a house not just restored, but rewritten. Not perfect, but purely, unapologetically hers. A place that remembered her name. And this time, so did the world outside. The next evening, Lorraine organized a small gathering party at her place. The music was low and rich, Ella Fitzgerald flowing through speakers hidden inside the rafters she'd once fought to preserve. Guests stood with glasses in hand, gathered not to impress, but to honor. Lorraine's gathering wasn't a party. It was a restoration, a return, a declaration dressed in linen and laughter. She served the wine herself, laid out rosemary crackers with fig jam, lit candles with a steady hand. She didn't let anyone else carry the weight because it no longer felt heavy. Rachel arrived last, carrying a small box tied with twine and the same crooked grin she'd had since childhood. Her eyes scanned the entryway and landed on the new brass plaque outside the gate, visible through the open door. Carter House, established 1981, retitled 2025 in trust, R.M. Carter, heir. She looked at Lorraine with surprise. "You made it official?" she asked quietly. "I did," Lorraine replied, and so did the county clerk. Inside the box Rachel brought was a journal, handmade, soft leather, a gold-embossed title on the first page, "Not Fading." Writing, "I figured if anyone earned the right to write the second act," Rachel said, "it's you." Lorraine smiled. "I didn't earn it. I reclaimed it." The house bore her fingerprints again, not just on doorknobs and walls, but in spirit. The hallway was lined with framed photos, not of weddings or baby showers hosted by Jenna, but snapshots from decades past. Her design firm's opening, her first interior spread in Home and Hearth, and a candid photo of her and Charles dancing barefoot at a backyard barbecue. "I found this one in a storage bin," she said, tapping the frame gently. She'd labeled it miscellaneous. Rachel laughed. "And now?" "Now it's the cornerstone." The formal announcement came quietly over cake. Lorraine stood near the mantel, the fire low and warm, the room hushed. She raised a small glass, not to herself, but to what mattered. "I've spent a long time being mistaken for someone winding down," she said. "But turns out I was just watching everyone else spiral while I stood still." Soft laughter rippled through the room. "I've retitled the house, the land, the will, and the future." She looked at Rachel. "Effective immediately, the next steward of this place will be someone who knows the difference between inheriting property and understanding what it took to build it." Rachel blinked, eyes glassy. "Me?" Lorraine nodded. "You." There were no applause, just that collective breath a room takes when something sacred is spoken aloud. Later, when the last guests hugged their goodbyes and the fire had mellowed to embers, Lorraine walked Rachel to the porch. "You really mean it?" Rachel asked softly. "I never say things I don't mean anymore," Lorraine replied. "That was the old me, the quiet one." Rachel held her hand. "I won't let it go to waste." "I know." Back inside, Lorraine opened the drawer of her writing desk and placed the journal inside. Beneath it was a copy of her new will, every line airtight, every clause intentional. A final paragraph left in her own hand, just for Rachel. "Protect the walls, yes, but more than that, protect your voice inside them." As moonlight crept along the baseboards, Lorraine made herself one last cup of tea, slipped off her shoes, and stepped outside barefoot. The brass plaque caught the porch light. The wind was brisk, the sky quiet. Her phone buzzed once, a message from Jenna. "So you've erased me?" Lorraine didn't reply. She slipped the phone into her pocket, raised her cup to no one and everyone, smiled, and said, "She thought I'd fade out quietly. Instead, I turned the volume all the way up."